Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Transpicuous Views. We're doing Astrology 2.0 tonight, and because I have never had a show fall on this actual date before, I finally get to say, May the 4th be with you. So, it's May 4th, and I was very, very sad on a totally off-topic thing. If you guys don't know, 2 days before May the 4th, Peter Mayhew passed away. And anyone who is a Star Wars fan knows that we're talking about the actor who's played Chewbacca through all of these years passed away. So it's a very sad day in our house. A little bit of a sad day. I want to welcome, we have Meghan and Jules, and hopefully Amina will be joining us later. We've kind of lost Amina. Not sure where she was going to. Hi guys, how you doing?
Good. Crazy. It's been a crazy week. But I'm here.
I concur.
Yeah. And if I start coughing and choking, you two will have to be ready to jump in and fill in the blank spots while I'm muted out, while I'm coughing and choking with this cold. The insanity. Okay, so I don't even know where to start, because the conversations that I have with these guys have been ragingly insane. Like when we look at different stuff that's going on, we're again talking about the dates and the cycles. Dates and cycles keep seeming to come up where we have certain alignments, and then we see cycles happen along those alignment. And we've had, over the last 2 weeks, umpteen dozen conversations on this. And then we've had just strange stuff happening this week and last week that geomagnetically, like we saw some really bizarre stuff happening in the magnetosphere. I did an update at the beginning of the last Unfuck It discussion on this. We're going to get into a really interesting article. I'm going to have Meghan and Jules start kind of take this apart, because it's not one article, isn't it? It's a whole selection of articles on the topic of, like, basically magnetism, magnetics, human physiology, planetary alignments, and kind of how all this shit fits together. And it's crazy. It is what we've been talking about, electric universe stuff. You can't take astrology away from science. Astrology is science. It may be described in different terms. The terminology might be different. But when we start looking at these deeper articles that are talking about magnetics, talking about the planetary alignments and how the magnetics fields of each planet are interacting and affect each other, and thereby affect us as humans, it's really, really interesting. Like, really, because it's more affirmation. As far as I'm concerned, it's more affirmation that there's so much going on here, so much more going on here than what modern science, I think, even comprehends. Like, this has been deliberately left out of the scientific education. These people have no concept of the interactions between these planetary bodies on a basic scientific level of magnetism and electricity. They don't get it. But little pieces are coming out. Little pieces are coming out more and more and more now that are drawing direct line correlations between all these things. So I want to talk about a little bit first, because I know we're going to talk about the month of May and what's coming up. But I want to talk a little bit about the month of April. And what the fuck was that? Like, you guys have been like throwing all this stuff on the table. We got this planet's doing this, and this is doing this, and we're like, oh, my life has gone completely fucking insane. Somebody rescue me from whatever planet is fucking with me. So which one of you wants to dive into this and talk about April first? Because holy shit.
Go, Megan.
We can kind of hit at it together if you'd like.
Yeah.
We can hit it. Yeah, we can hit it together. Like, I haven't really, like, April seems like so long ago now, and I know it's only the 4th of May because so much has happened. And I've been looking at, like, all the geomag stuff from the previous show and getting into, like, deep diving into a few rabbit holes around Jupiter and around planetary declination and dug up all these articles, which we will get into. But April, oh my God. May, oh my God. Megan.
July, oh my God. Next January, oh my God. When does it end?
Know, right?
It doesn't end. April was crazy. I think we could all collectively agree on that. And the reason why I think that April was crazy, 3 reasons. We have Pluto, we have Saturn, and we have the South Node. So again, we're going back to this crazy lineup of all the heavy energy sitting in Capricorn. We had the South Node conjunct Pluto, and when we had that, we saw Notre Dame burn. Then we saw Pluto go retrograde, then we saw Saturn go retrograde, and then we see Saturn with the South Node. They were together during the station of Saturn, but right afterwards, they were like exact down to the minute of the degree, and it's just really been apparent everything that's tying together with these long-term cycles. If you think of the energies of the South Node, Pluto, and Saturn, you have Saturn, who is, he's like the taskmaster and the builder. He's the boundary setter. He's the last thing we can see with our eye. He's the limits. And then you have Pluto, who likes to, smash apart anything that limits it. Then you have the South Node, which is saying, like, this needs to be released. So when you add them all together, you have Pluto powerful with the South Node saying, well, no, this needs to fall. And then you have Saturn saying, well, no, I need to keep this, like, I need to hold it tight. It needs to stay. I'm not going to let it go. And I think it's very interesting when you get into the technicality of the degrees. Saturn was at 23 when it went retrograde, and the nodes were at 22. 22 is where the grand conjunction happens, and that's where the nodes were when Notre Dame fell. Then when Saturn went retrograde on the 29th, it was at 20 degrees. Well, 20 degrees is where we're going to have the lunar eclipse 2 days before the conjunction. And Saturn going retrograde at 20 degrees is also significant because when Pluto goes retrograde and stations direct, it will go direct on 20 degrees. So my hypothesis is over the next several months, we're going to see all the power structures of control really clamping down and saying, like, no, I can't let this go. Like, no, I'm going to oppress and force, and this is the structure that must be. And then come September, Pluto's going to be like, yeah, right.
Okay.
I don't know what you want to add to that, Jules.
All right. I'm just going to jump in and share my screen for a minute, because I think if we can just go back to some of the basics about the nodes and kind of how
I
it
was
works.
just going to say, can we back up and let's review some of our lingo here and explain again, like South Nodes, because this is one that comes up all the time.
Okay. So, can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so I've just pulled up like some kind of astronomy basics. We've got the Earth in the middle, and basically we've got the path of the moon, which is that kind of dotted line, and we've got the ecliptic, which is the apparent path of the sun. Now, generally the Earth goes around the sun, but in this particular diagram, it's the other way around, so you can actually see the path of the sun. Now, where the lunar nodes sit is where the path of the moon crosses over that ecliptic, the path of the sun. So it's kind of in a shadow period. So generally, if you, hopefully you can see my camera, but generally it's like a sine wave, like the planetary movement. So not only are the planets orbiting the sun, they're also going into what's called declination, and then they're rising up to culmination, and so on and so forth. So these lunar nodes are where the path of the moon crosses the ecliptic, or the sun's path, and that's why we have eclipses, lunar eclipses and solar eclipses, because they're crossing over that path, and usually the shadow of the earth is in front of the moon, or vice versa, and we get the moon cross over the path of the sun. So that kind of just explains what the nodes are, the nodal points. So the nodal points are the crossing of the ecliptic, and that's where the eclipses happen. So astrologically, they're, I guess they're classed as shadow points. They're really sensitive points in the chart. And generally, if something's sitting on the south node, when it's coming down to the bottom of its nadir cycle and then coming back up, that's kind of like a regressive period. It's when people go inwards, it's tied to the past and past karma and past lives and all that sort of stuff. But it is generally a very sensitive point for people personally, but also collectively. And I think that's what we've seen in April, pretty much. It's just that we've got Saturn and Pluto. Sorry, I did stop the share. We've got Saturn and Pluto sitting on that south nodal point. So it's like a crossing point. It's a trigger that we're regressing back into a dark period at the moment. So do you think that's
regressing back into a dark period at the moment? If that doesn't describe April, I don't know what does. Regressing into a dark period.
And if you think about it, it's similar to the dark period we went through in January, because when we were in the eclipse cycle in January, we were in the southern eclipses, because the south node is in Capricorn and the sun was in Capricorn. So in July, when we have the eclipse cycles, we're in the northern eclipses because we're with the north node. So it's kind of interesting the way it kind of waves itself about.
Yeah, so those lunar eclipse cycles happen every 6 months. So generally coming into the winter period, you've got the eclipse cycle of, say, January, and then you've got the eclipse cycle of July. So it's different on hemispheres. I'm in the southern hemisphere in Australia, so we're coming into our winter right now. But generally that's how the lunar nodes work. But there's also, we've got planetary nodes as well. So every time, say, a larger planet passes that ecliptic, that path of the sun, it also has its own nodal point.
So I was just going to ask that if you've got the same diagram of here's the sun's rotation and you see Jupiter crossing, then that's also a node, correct?
Yes, exactly. Okay. And because the larger planets have a much slower cycle, I just have to try and pull up this, where I got it from, because I've got so many tabs open, it's ridiculous.
Welcome to my world.
I know, right? 19 tabs open. Don't know where the music
we have about
playing.
6 tabs open.
Yeah. Okay, so I might just share again. Hopefully you can see this. Right. Okay, so I've brought up the planetary nodes for the larger planets.
Okay.
So we've got Pluto, which is very slow. It's got a orbit of 248 degrees. So generally, that crossing of the ecliptic only happens between 19 to 22 degrees Capricorn, and that's for everybody. It's a permanent sensitive point. And this is where the the grand conjunction in January is going to happen between those degrees. So I think it's at like 21 degrees. And so that's going to be a very sensitive point as well. And also Saturn is between 18 to 30 degrees Capricorn. Now, I haven't actually worked out when it's going to be and if it's going to cross over that nodal point at the time of the conjunction. May take a little bit of time to work that out. But those two planets are also going to be in Capricorn at those degrees, and they're going to be conjuncting their own south nodal point plus the lunar south nodal point as well. So it's
that's
basically
January 20th?
It's around the 12th of January, I think.
12th.
10 to 12th of January, depending on where you are in the world and what time zone you're in. But it's between those 2 points. So basically, the ecliptic signifies like an entire synod cycle. So with Pluto, with its orbit being 248 years, this signifies that it's part of a much larger cycle. Not a cycle of 33 to 37 years, it's a cycle of at least 250 years.
Wow. Like
so this is
we're all stuck in
major.
that. It's not just like a Venus or where it moves so quickly that the different people could have different things in their charts. It's like, no, everyone has got this Pluto one.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So for a lot of people, there's old stuff coming up. People are seeing shadows. People are seeing just being at the lowest of the low, or in some periods, like they're just going, this isn't working anymore. The system's not working. Like before the show started, we're saying, we're so programmed, especially 9 to 5ers, that we've got to wake up at a certain time, we've got to eat at a certain time, we've got to do things at a certain time throughout the day, and we've got to go to bed at the same time. And all those structures are really kind of just falling apart now, or people are just realizing they're just shattering because they're just not working anymore.
Yep.
And you could think of that in the collective as well, like with the corporate system and the structures of society. And I think with Notre Dame as well, that just signified something bigger. And I've watched so many videos saying it's a false flag, or it's this and that and this and that, but there's people are taking a step back and they're going, no, it's really symbolic of something else that's occurring here. And we've also had, just a week later on Easter Sunday, we had the bombings in Sri Lanka. We've got all these religious kind of things happening.
And okay, I just want to comment on that right there. And going to take kind of a step out of the astrology for a moment, because we are seeing this massive amount of churches catching on fire, like, and ridiculous. And it's global. Like, it's like, but it's not just churches. So, for example, sorry, going to start pointing fingers here. The Christians are all going, oh my God, we're being martyred. Oh, we're such victims. Okay, suck it up, buttercup. It ain't just you. There was a Thai Buddhist temple, a major one that burned down 2 weeks ago. There has been mosques. There was a couple of synagogues. Okay, this is across the board. So if we want to talk about control structures, what's the biggest control structure on this planet? Religion. Religion. What's burning to the ground right now? Quite literally, all those things that are representative of religions, to the point of you've got, the Vatican shit burning to the ground from within from all the pedophilia shit. You've got all the Wahhabism, Saudi pretend Islamism, because it's not really Islamic, but the Wahhabism stuff burning from within when you have all these imams, pretend imams, because they're Wahhabists, so they're not really imams, saying the most horrific, racist, disgusting shit unimaginable, burning themselves down from within. So Stop trying to turn it into a divisionary, oh, woe is me, my religion is being, attacked, and look at it across the board. This is all religions, and they're all burning down from within and without. And it doesn't matter whether it was set by the fire was set by a terrorist or a bomb or faulty wiring. It doesn't matter. They're all coming down. And it quite literally coming down right in front of us. Hi, Amina. Hi, darling. Sorry. I wanted to have my little rant in there before I said hi and good morning to you.
Danny, tying into what you were just... Oh, sorry.
It's all right. I didn't know that we were starting at a different time today, and I was so set for the normal time that it's your time that's changed, right?
Our time was changed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's completely messed with my clock as well, because I said, oh, it's going to be like 8 p.m. my time, and it was like, oh shit, it's actually 7 p.m. my time. So yeah, because you guys are on summertime, and it's just completely messed me up for all the shows at the moment. So
time zones suck, and daylight savings time. So that's a control structure we'd like to see fall.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Megan.
With what you were just saying about what's happening across the board with religions, and if you look, it's also happening within different government systems too. So these are structures that Capricorn rules. And what happens with the South Node and also with Saturn and Pluto conjunctions is it's a major clearing. So when you have something affected by the South Node, it's kind of like, I don't know if you want to get woo, like the universe is saying, like, this needs an overhaul. It's stagnant. It's in its lower vibration of energy. So something needs to be released so that it can, come back up into a higher vibration. So another Capricorn word is integrity. So everything that we're seeing fall are structures that are out of alignment with integrity.
Yep.
People, systems, governments, religions, anything that's not standing in integral authority, like true actual authority that's good for more than just the individual or a power play. Like, it's so apparent, and especially since Saturn went retrograde a week ago, it's like you can just see all these people that are abusing power or just outside of integrity within a power position, and we're going to see more of this.
Guys, talk for just 2 seconds. I have to rescue a dog. I'll be right back. You guys chat amongst yourself for a second. Keep going on that topic because I want to get more into it.
Yeah, what Danny said was the money system as well. So we've got Uranus, which went into Taurus briefly last May, and then sort of popped back out into Aries, and then it came back in over the last, I think it was 6 to 8 weeks ago. So someone in the chat said that when Uranus went into Aries 7 years ago, so it's got a cycle of about 7 to 8 years, thereabouts. It's pretty consistent. Then we had Fukushima happen on the first day. And then on the first day, it went into Taurus. I think we had something big in Peru as well.
Yep.
That went off. But generally, Taurus represents, or the second house kind of represents, possessions and personal values and money as well. So we're seeing like a breakdown of the monetary system. Taurus is also really tribal. It's like the first earth element. So people are coming together, looking at different ways of, creating different values in their life, or, money or whatever. So there's a lot of breakdown in that area too. So which ties into previous cycles that Amina had brought up in our chats about the whole financial system. So yeah, what have you found, Amina? Lots, I assume.
Wow, it goes back hundreds of years, doesn't it? So this financial system that we're in is like, if you think about it, it goes back to when we first minted gold coins and opened banks, the modern banking system. So that goes back to the time of the Crusades. And well, most people know that we've got the Knights Templars, and the Knights Templars set up a kind of banking system of their own, and it didn't become open to non-Knights Templars until the 1200s. And in the 1200s, in the later 1200s, we saw that there is the Bank of Verona, Bank of Venice. Venice is the place where, if anyone knows Shakespeare, that's where he set The Merchant of Venice with the character Shylock and that, pound of flesh for a pound of gold theme. And it was to highlight how usury has entered the monetary system. So how did usury enter the money system when most people in Venice were either Christian, Muslim, or Jewish? And it is against all three of those religions to charge interest for loans. So they set up a system. So once the Bank of Venice was set up, they created another law which enabled people to create, which enabled the banks or the legal system to create legal fictional persons. And those persons registered are not the same persons that are under God's law. So they're in the same name, they're registered as the name that you're given, but a legal person can be charged interest. And I thought that was very interesting because that's the beginning of the whole banking system that we're still using today. And now we're in the nearly 2020, and this is the same legal system that has been used to apply usury and interests on loans ever since. And it's just become more and more elaborated every time we have a Pluto or a Saturn conjunction. Something shifts again in that whole monetary system. So there's like three times in a century we get a conjunction of Pluto and Capricorn, and then there's another level to that system. Every single stage has been set, and it's starting to come down. Through the astrology, I see it starting to come down, but I'm not 100% sure how it's coming down within, the real world. So if you look at the 1500s, that's when we had Pluto-Saturn conjunction in Capricorn, right? 1516. The Admiralty were looking for a way to measure time when they're out at sea. They wanted to find a clock that would work, because clocks were working on what's it called, a pendulum, and a pendulum wouldn't be able to work out at sea. So they were unable to track time accurately, and navigations were going off until they could get a clock that could work at sea. And it was around that time that someone in London, I forgot his name, it will come back to me, invented this clock that had multiple weights on it that kept time out at sea. And so because the Admiralty had control of that timing, Greenwich Mean Time was set up as the 0 degree latitude. And this also affects the banking system, because the laws that were created for usury and interest started to spread around the world. And so this is how the trading routes were set up, and how colonization began, because it was all centralized around the latitudes. And so it became another level of the banking system. And then we see again another Pluto-Saturn conjunction in the 1700s. Is it 1763, 68, 1768?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
That's when it began, and it went into the actual conjunction happened in 1770s, and that's when we see Rothschild banking starting, another layer, and that's worldwide. And now we have a system that's been serving itself, but it hasn't been serving us in a way that we would have liked it to, not the way it was sold to us, but it's been serving the banking system and those who work through it and for it. And every time there's a layer, 1786 and 1750, 1713, exact conjunctions. Thanks, Meghan. Yeah, well, we have every single time there is another layer added to it. But the thing that happened this time is when Pluto started retrograding it met the degree where it's about to meet Saturn, when both planets started retrograding in Pluto. And then we saw that something's happened to the Rothschilds. And the news is quite sparse, what's going on with them. But so far, we've been told that they're selling their assets.
Suddenly selling off assets, selling off, like, was it one of them just sold off a big fancy car? Yeah. It's like, what's going on here?
And Marie Antoinette's writing desk, which is something that's been in their family for a long, long time, that they're very proud of. Like that's one asset that they've been holding on to. And it's like, well, what's going on? Well, we can see that what is going on, that the banking system is having some kind of meltdown, and things are not, they're not peaking to serve them anymore. Something is going on underneath the surface. And don't forget, Pluto also rules oil. Yeah, but in the time that both the planets started to go backwards, which is like from the 1st of May or the 30th of April, Saturn went backwards as well. Suddenly it seems like revelations are coming out. Wars were controlling oil. Oil was controlling the banking system as well. It was flourishing it. And then we've seen this Venezuela situation happen, and an attempted coup, which didn't work out because it was time. And the timing of it was when the planets were going backwards. If they'd timed the coup when the planets are going forwards, they might have succeeded. But when the planets are going backwards, Pluto rules oil. Capricorn rules banking. So you can see where this is all going. It's all retrograding. The whole plan is retrograding with the planets. And then as they try and push it forward, when it goes forward again, we're going to get that major conjunction happen. So it's not working. Something like Meghan said, when it's out of integrity, it's not going to work this time.
So if any of you three get contacted by like the Rothschilds or the big banks or the U.S. government to try and plan their coup, can you give us a little heads up? Like, because like you guys seem to have, like, you guys have got all worked out, and it's like, okay, you guys just they're ours. You can't have them. I want to drop back to the Knights Templar. You brought it up. And the Knights Templar play a very, very interesting role in history. And a lot of it's been twisted, and you've got to do some, and over the years, over the last 20 years, I can't tell you how many times I've been down the Knights Templar rabbit hole. And every time I go down, other little pieces become clear. And you realize that these guys, they had control of the monetary system. They had the wealth to be able to do this. They had the wealth to be able to buy kingdoms, quite literally. And of course, there's always the fact of like that some of their wealth was not wealth as in gold, that it's the artifacts or things that they held on to, that they were the protectors of, were even that much more important. Now then, of course, we have the whole Friday the 13th play out. And you have, the Vatican come in and going, well, gee, we want to control all this wealth, and so we're just going to wipe out the Templars. And the Vatican then took over, like literally took over the financial market, took over that aspect of it. And Meghan brought it up in the chat. The King Templar, so to speak. And of course, his name has just gone right out of my head. Where was he killed? Notre Dame. He was executed, Jacques de Molay. Where was he killed? He was killed in Notre Dame. What church just happens to burn to the ground? Notre Dame. Now, the interesting piece that I'm playing with at the moment is, of course, considering where I live, one of my other favorite rabbit holes to go down is the Knights of Malta. Knights of Malta is a really, really fucking interesting rabbit hole. They've been around since the fall of the Templars. And there are many people who have suggested that the Knights of Malta got, let's just say, the Templars who escaped execution may have slipped themselves into that order in order to hide. But then you have the takeover, the Knights of Malta controlled by the Vatican. Now, if you guys have not watched the news, in the last 3 years, there's been a war going on between the Vatican and the Knights of Malta. Because traditionally, on paper, etc., the Vatican controls the Knights of Malta because they are a Catholic order. Yet there's a war going on between the two, and Pope Francis stepped in and started saying, you're going to do it this way, you're going to do it this way, and you're going to do it this way. And the Grand Masters of the Knights of Malta were like, yeah, I don't think so. Don't think so. The Knights of Malta are a sovereign state, just like the Vatican City is. They own property in Rome, and just like the Vatican, that property is not part of Italy. It is considered a sovereign state. They have their own passports. They have their own currency. This is very, very interesting when we talk about banking, etc. Now, going back to where I am here in Malta, the current political rulership of Malta has decided to make Malta, or to push to try and make Malta, the blockchain Bitcoin central for all of Europe, if not the world. 3 of the 5 biggest cryptocurrency exchanges are now located in Malta. They're offering massive, massive deals to any blockchain-based business to move to Malta. Like unbelievable deals. Cuts on tax rates, property rates, I mean, you name it. They're doing everything in their power to bring cryptocurrency, blockchain-based businesses into Malta. Okay, and I have to question again. Knights of Malta, finance, banking, the past history that we've looked at. Is someone within Malta trying to set that up as the new base of a new financial system? So I'm trying to prepare something in advance. It's interesting. Like I said, all of these changes are swinging around, swinging around, swinging around. When we look at cryptocurrencies, the last year has been, you might as well just erase it. Erase this last year, pretend that 2018 did not happen in the cryptocurrencies markets. But now, in the month of April, towards the end of April, all of a sudden the cryptocurrencies are climbing again. Bitcoin is climbing, all the other currencies are beginning to climb again. So is this an indicator of, again, the change in financial systems, like we said? If this one, i.e. the petrodollar, the Rothschilds, etc., is falling to pieces, and we know it is, we know they're bankrupt, are they, the quintessential they, now trying to make this new one to set into its place? In which case, my question is, if we're looking at these retrograding, is it going to be a failure? Because it's not standing in integrity? Oh, well, we talk about transparency. What's coming out right now in the news? Massive transparency on cryptocurrencies. Major exchanges, are leveraging fucking cryptocurrencies and creating their own fucking derivatives. They don't have on hand the Bitcoin they say they have to cover all their bets. Well, that's just mainstream Western banking, isn't it? We have the Tether, which is a major cryptocurrency, which is purportedly tethered to the US dollar in value, so therefore it should always be worth $1. It's all of a sudden falling. Its value's falling. Its value's falling. Is that the transparency? Are we, like, again, their system was set up. Someone has tried to set up a corrupt system within a system, and it's being made transparent for everyone to see. I know. It's really, really fucking interesting. When we look at the financial, just the financial aspects of this.
You know, Danny, it's funny when you look at the financial aspects, and we have Uranus having just moved into Taurus. So we've been talking a lot about Saturn. As I mentioned earlier, Saturn is the last thing that we can visibly see with our eye without the help of a telescope or something like that. So Saturn is our limit. So everything inside the rings of Saturn or the orbit of Saturn, that's under Saturn's control. So the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, they aren't. So Taurus rules finances. Uranus is in Taurus. So Uranus isn't bound to Saturn's limits. It can say, oh, you want some transparency? Here you go. Neptune can be like, oh, let's dissolve this shit, you know? And Pluto can be like, well, let me smash it.
There are some astrologers that specialize in financial astrology and can track the financial crashes. Like we had when Pluto went into Capricorn in 2008, we had the stock market crash then. So there are definitely, I'm not an expert in financial astrology by any means, but they can be tracked by the cycles as well. And it's related to the larger planets.
So if we look at, we just talked about the financial. We look at the political. Governments are being torn down. Governments are being, like, the protests of the people protesting governments has exploded exponentially, and it's spreading all over the world like wildfire, which is why, of course, the mainstream media won't talk about France and the Yellow Vest protests, because the last thing you want to do is give everyone else the idea that, hey, this sounds like a great idea, let me go get a yellow vest. Governments are in trouble everywhere. You have Theresa May. We have everything that's going on in the British government right now is just such levels of insanity, and I realize that anyone who's from North America or Australia or outside of the Europe especially won't be following what's going on in British politics. The insanity of what's happening in British politics right now in the UK is so crazy. I don't know how every British person is not standing on the streets with hatchets and pitchforks and torches. It's that level of insanity. Everything from Brexit to taxation to new laws that are being passed that are just criminal in aspects of how they've just destroyed their healthcare system, the education system, mandatory vaccine laws coming in. You can't go to school unless your child's vaccinated. Oh, we're also going to censor the internet because it's that, we're coming up to an election. We don't want the Russian bots coming in. So we're going to censor your internet, your Facebook, your social media. It is insane. We have the States and we have Canada. The same stuff is going on there. We have political parties like, holy crap, the left versus the right. Epic insanity that is I literally use my jaw on the floor, that people can't see that they're both the same fucking beast. We see taxation. We see the mandatory vaccine laws being pushed. If this isn't transparency, I don't know what is. Americans like to talk about their freedom of speech, freedom of religion, their freedom of, we have all these rights that are ours, and yet they're literally trying to push laws that take those freedoms blatantly away, and pushing it in the media and in social media in such a way that they're creating a division of, I can't even describe it. Like, the people are rampaging. They're ranting online about anti-vaxxers should be shot. Anti-vaxxers should be put into prisons. They should be arrested. Their children should be taken away from them and forcefully vaccinated by the state. And you're just like, holy crap, do you hear the words coming out of your mouth? Do you not comprehend, right? Like, it's like that whole, first they came for the anti-vaxxers. We're seeing laws getting passed in the States. In Oregon, I think Oregon has become the new test state to test all the most ridiculous laws they can possibly put out. We're going to do it in Oregon first. Every newborn baby has to have a well baby visit by, like Children's Aid or the social services or a nurse, regardless of who you are, has to come into your house and verify that that baby is being taken care of. They've also passed the law to allow dementia patients to be starved and dehydrated to death. No water, no food. We're just going to force them to die. We have mandatory vaccine laws being pushed. Transparency of just how invasive the state has become, and it's going on everywhere. So my question is, since all the planets are doing this reversal thing, does that mean that all this shit's just going to fall? Is that my hope? Is that what you guys are talking about, that if they keep pushing these laws during this time, when this is happening like this, that those laws are all going to be overturned?
I think it's almost like we're coming to a tipping point where people, you go through the hero's journey, right? And people get to their very lowest point before they become enlightened and they can, rise, essentially. So it feels like we're just going into regressing back into these draconian kind of times where it's just insanity at the moment and people are feeling oppressed. Me and my partner just did the family budget last week and we're going, oh my God, like I've never, I've got a good job or whatever, but we are so broke. Like the cost of living is just insane. I think we're just I think people are just really feeling oppressed by society and how it's kind of regressed at the moment, if you know what I mean. So maybe it will fall, but I think it will get worse before it gets better. I think there will be a tipping point, and we're probably seeing that with the yellow vests in France. They're known for revolution, and that was one of the last cycles as well, was the French Revolution.
The French Revolution, yeah. Oh, so nice.
And the American
and the American Revolution.
So these were Pluto and Capricorn themes that happened in the last cycle of Pluto and Capricorn.
One of the last cycles,
one of the last cycles. So the last time Pluto was in Capricorn, this is what happened. The people were protesting against their governments and their systems, but a new system went into place, and this system has passed its full cycle almost to the degree. And so this is what we're seeing. We're seeing the recycle of the protesting and the uprising of the people in these two countries that had the major revolutions the last time. So these countries set off everyone else in the world to enter the new era, the new wave. And so it's happening again, this new era, another new wave. But I don't think we're going to get absolute disclosure until 2026, because that's when Saturn catches up with Uranus, the planet of truth, and disclosure as 0 degrees Aries. That's a cardinal point. That is a very major conjunction that's going to happen, because 0 degrees Aries is the first degree of the whole zodiac. That is the new era, really.
Okay, so
what we see crumbling now,
Amina, that point that you're talking about, as we talk as a cycle, because everything is cyclical, when was the last time that 0 degrees Aries that you're talking about happened? And do we actually know?
Yeah, Uranus has a complete zodiacal orbit of 84 years. So
yeah, but it didn't meet with it didn't meet with Saturn at 0 degrees the last time.
No. So you run
how
it.
many?
Yeah. It would be many cycles potentially.
I don't think it's in our recent history. I don't think it's in any history we can research the exact dates of when. I don't know even if it has happened before. But 0 degrees is such a major point. All the 0 cardinal signs are major points. So 0 Aries, 0 Capricorn, 0 Libra.
Okay, so
0 Cancer.
Here's what I want to ask. Back in 2000, I think it was 14, I wrote a series of articles talking about the templates. The religion template, the politics template, the financial template, and it just keeps going. And I coined the term same girl, different party dress. Right? As in each one of these cycles, they try to make it look something new. So you have revolution. Revolution happens, and the people rise up. They pull down those in power. They all cheer, yay, we've had a people's revolution. But the next that comes in is the exact same thing. It's the exact same government. It's the exact same people in control. And we've seen it play out over and over. And I talk about the Chinese. The Chinese are the kings at this. They are literally like dynasties. And you watch them play it out, and they go, oh, well, the government gets, or the ruling family gets completely opulent and degenerate. They have the people rise up. They tear down that royal family. But meanwhile, what you don't realize is the same royal family members have been buried into the next group. So we have like a generation of like, yay, freedom of the people. But then slowly, it goes right back to the same place again. Are we going to break this
Sorry,
cycle?
I made a mistake. I said Uranus. I meant Jupiter, Saturn, Jupiter, Aries, and Uranus entering Gemini. That's
Okay.
what I meant. That's disclosure. Because it's about truth and the solidifying of truth coming out into the open and people talking about it. So that's 2026 to me. That it's the 0 Aries that is the most poignant piece of that information, the 0 Aries, and Uranus changing sign. So Saturn and Jupiter meeting. And this is like, so I think we're beginning in from now, we're starting to see things fall apart. But I think it will start to really crumble, obviously, in that, that they cannot hold it from the news any longer. And the people would have pieced it together. By the time we get this conjunction happen, I think that is a financial crash in 2020. But how it unravels, how it progresses, is that people have to fully comprehend, and that doesn't take a few months. It takes years for masses of people to comprehend what's going on and demand disclosure. And that Aries point is a very demanding point. So disclosure happens after 6 years, I think. Yeah.
But these guys know the cycles as well, so they kind of plan for them, and you can see how there's major shifts of power. And I think the first astrology show we went into, like, just what happened just after World War II with one of the last Pluto Saturn conjunctions. There was a lot of stuff happening to set up or plant the seeds for the next cycle. So rather than crumbling, it kind of just expanded and got bigger. Mm-hmm. And these structures didn't really crumble. But this particular one's like really interesting because it's not only, it's a convergence of a lot of different cycles happening all at once. And we're kind of just seeing the end of that. So when you look at a moon cycle and you're at the very last part of the waning moon, it's called like a balsamic cycle, and we're kind of just seeing the end of a lot of different things happening all at once. So, but there's definitely a feeling like there are seeds being planted for the next cycle, whether that's blockchain, whether that's a new financial system. There are things happening in the background that haven't really come to light as yet.
Well, if you can see like how like the last cycle of that cycle of 1947 that set up all those government agencies, what preceded that is the clue that they knew it was going to be a timely event, was that they set up the IMF before 1945, just
to be the umbrella to put everything else underneath.
Yeah, and it's the IMF that seems to be the one that controls how governments are shaping and forming.
Yeah.
So they you know, it's controlling the money, it's giving them the loans, it's calling in those loans whenever they say the dates that they call in their loans doesn't seem to follow any particular pattern. It's when they decide that this country has it's time to pay its dues, that's when they call in their loans.
Yep, exactly.
It depends on who's leading that country.
Policy they don't like.
Yes, and if the population is a big population and there's like say a recent election or something like that, and the person that's put in charge is someone they don't like, they'll call in the loan.
Yep.
That's how they time it. So how that is controlled since 1945, it's quite obvious that they saw the cycle coming, because after the IMF they set up everything else. So we want to look at how that structure is, where it is weak, where astrology can affect it. And it seems to be that this 2020 cycle is where it does affect it.
Yep. Well, we all know that the quintessential they, like to test. So I just talked about Oregon. Oregon is they're testing all these fucking horrific laws, but trying to push them out in Oregon. Just got to watch everything in Oregon right now. But we've seen big tests happen. And I've commented on this for years now. A lot of people want to use Iceland and what happened, the revolution in Iceland, etc., that happened in the last 10 years. They want to use that as their prime example. Look, the people can stand up and they can win, blah, blah, blah. And I've kept saying, no. That was a test. They took a really tiny, tiny place that no one really knows anything about, with a very small population, and they ran a test. So what happened in Iceland? In Iceland, the people had an uprising over all the debt, over all the banking shit, over the government, etc. What happened to the bankers? Some middlemen went to prison. None of the big guys went to prison. And those middlemen who went to prison for like 15 months, 18 months, 26 months. It was really, really, and it was done years after, like it was like 3 years after the revolution that these guys were charged and sentenced. Because then the furor is over it. The people aren't thinking about it anymore, and they could just let that happen and no one would remember. They got a new government. Government of the people, by the people, for the people. Okay? And the government started handing out, talking about laws, and we're going to have people vote on these laws. Now, when I was in Morocco, I actually had a really good friend who was there visiting, who's from Iceland. And she was talking all about this, of, no, Iceland, we've done it, and if we can do it, anyone can do it. And I said, okay, but here's the thing. And she showed me an article about a new law that was being passed, and they were calling on the public to vote on how this should be set up. And I said, okay, so they're having you vote on this, but did they give you the transparency to actually have all the knowledge that you needed to be able to actually make an informed decision? And she was like, what do you mean? I said, well, they're voting, and that was it. The vote was on banning derivatives and leveraging could only be 3%, et cetera, from now on, because they're going to protect the Icelandic banking from ever going through one of these crashes. I said, but did they tell you that the derivatives was limited to 5% when this crash happened? Did they tell you that the corruption aspect of what killed Iceland's economy happened in the city of London, not in Iceland? Did they tell you that all these other countries also have limits of 3% and they're still in the same position because all of the derivatives and leveraging are happening in the city of London, not in your country? So did they explain that? And she was like, no. I said, okay, so now you just went to the polls as the public, being empowered, we're going to make the decisions for our government, but they didn't give you all the information, so you just made a choice thinking that you've made the best choice for your country and all the people, but you don't have any information. You've just made an uninformed choice. And she was shocked. And I said, so do you comprehend that this is just fallacy? Unless you're the people, it's great that the people are given the choice, but unless they actually are going to disclose all the background information so people can make an informed choice, their choices don't even matter, because the media spin doctors everything to get the public to vote however it is they want them to vote, which is the exact same thing all over the world. And people are like, oh, but Iceland won. I'm like, no, they didn't. It was a test. It was just a test.
But if you look at how the UK was told to vote against Brexit in their information, it went to every household. This information, the government obviously wanted to stay in Europe, and they sent the information to everyone to vote, saying how much
terrible
better it would be
is
if you stayed in Europe. And everyone voted for Brexit. And that shocked the government. That's why they're constantly delaying the exit, because they don't actually want to leave. But the people voted. They didn't think the people would vote against staying.
But there's more to. I mean, that's when we get into there's all of these things. There's so many deeper levels, and we won't go on that tangent yet, because I'll go off on that'll be it.
Iceland banking system, the reveal was connected to Assange. It was connected to WikiLeaks, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
So how much did he actually reveal? And to connect this to the astrology, this is when Pluto entered Capricorn. This was the beginning of Pluto entering Capricorn. These WikiLeaks revelations were the beginning of it. So what did he actually reveal to the Icelandics? What did he say that made them revolt and not take into consideration the top bankers? What was it? Because this WikiLeaks thing is playing out again.
It is. It absolutely is. And like I said on a previous show, it doesn't matter whether you're for Julian Assange, against him, whether you think he's the hero of the world or you think he's a shell. Doesn't matter who set him up, none of that matters. What matters is what it stands for. What WikiLeaks stands for, the educational aspects of it, that so many people woke up to so many things because of WikiLeaks. Now, again, I'm not going to say that Assange is a good guy or a bad guy. It's irrelevant at this point. But again, when we talk about the tie-ins, and WikiLeaks also plays into Malta too. Oh, and the Panama Papers, that's Malta too. So we have all these pieces here. And we look at the cycles, Now, for me personally, and this has nothing to do with astrology, because we all know that I know jack shit about astrology. But my gut is the fact of the next change, I don't want to say cycle. I believe it's the breaking of the cycle. That the people, as we're watching this lead up into it, as we're watching the propaganda, the spin doctrine, we're watching the epic insanity playing out in the news, in politics, in finance, across, it doesn't matter what aspect you want to look at. The people are waking up. And it's kind of like you said, it's kind of darkest before the dawn. And sometimes I think maybe that's part of this cycle, is before we can collapse this cycle completely, you have to wake everyone up to a certain level. And that is where you've got to make it so dark, so crazy, that even the most asleep and programmed person is going to go, what the hell happened? What the hell is going on? So with this coming cycle, so you're talking about this Aries at 0 degrees, and Aries being the beginning of the zodiac. But again, we don't have a time frame. Like, we can't say that this happens once every 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 100,000 years. We don't. There's no way of tracking that. Because that would be interesting to me. Like, I'd really like to know. And Megan says we could, but it would take time. Yeah, I can imagine the amount of time it would take to work out that kind of thing. That would be just crazy epic. So what are we looking at? Let's go back to looking at this month. What are we looking at for the month of May? Megan, take it away, because I know you've been looking at this shit. I'm putting her on the hot seat.
We've got some interesting astrology coming up this month. Let me just see if I can get my screen share going here. All right. So right now, we're in that dark of the moon phase because we're actually coming up. We're about just over 11 hours from the new moon peaking. It's really interesting, dark of the moon, because as the moon cleared through Aries, as it was waning, Chiron's no longer there and Uranus is no longer there. So this moon cycle was a lot of karmic releasing of all that Chiron stuff that's been sitting heavy with us. Or no, sorry, it crossed over Chiron. So it brings in the stuff that's sitting heavy with us, but it kind of clears out all the weird shit that Uranus had put on us over the last few years. And it's almost like we've gone through this stuff individually because now it's time for us as a collective to see that these things just don't work anymore, which again ties back into the Saturn flu. Like the whole year, all of the astrology this year, month by month, it's all about next January. It's unavoidable and inescapable at this point. So we have some planetary changes. I mean, Venus hops around pretty quick, but we're going to have Venus and Mars in a nice aspect to each other on the exact same day, mid-May. And Mars is going to be at one of the cardinal points that Amina was talking about. And this is in a build-up to a full moon in Scorpio. And this is the opposite point of where the moon likes to be. This is where the moon is in detriment. So I think I can picture it in my head. I'm trying to get like the language to come out the way that I see it. I think with Venus crossing over Uranus and Mars in a sign that it doesn't prefer to be in at an Aries point or a cardinal point, you're just going to see shit get really weird. As if it hasn't already been weird.
Oh,
sorry, I'm really distracted by Jessie.
Even weirder?
I'm a little distracted by Jessie getting ready in the corner. I think you're going to see people tuning into the Uranian energy with Venus there, because Venus is how we relate. So we're going to want something different, and we're going to want to break free, and we're really going to want to ground that down. And with Mars being in the sign that the North Node is in, we're going to feel this pull to go back into our humanity. But we also have oppression coming in at the same time. So what we want and what we actually can do are going to be on very different pages. And we see this play out month after month as we build up to the conjunction in January. And I think it's part of the process of getting people frustrated and pissed off enough that they just no longer consent to what's going on. Because if we are accepting of the system, then we're not going to say no to the system, and the system's not going to collapse. I think with the full moon, actually I can pull up a chart for that. I think with the full moon in Scorpio, Scorpio likes to dig deep. Scorpio goes down into the hidden recesses of like the underbelly, like the dark underbelly of everything, and the full moon illuminates. So I think with the full moon, there's going to be disclosure. Let me just whip up the chart for that. If one of you guys want to jump in while I pull up the chart for the full moon, we can talk about the disclosure that's coming. I'll just jump on mute for a second. I don't know, Jules.
Yeah, I'll jump in because I want to sort of after this move into some of the geomag kind of stuff.
And that's exactly what I was going to ask. I was like, oh, we're over the
get
hour.
into that, but I don't want to take all your spotlight, Megan, because I was working through a few things after the last show, which was around the weird geomag stuff, and I think we've been having a look at this from like all these different perspectives, and people have mentioned things in the UU room about Jupiter and the planets, and going into the electromagnetic theory, and I've found a few things that I want to read through, but I don't know if you want to jump into that now, but yeah, I've just found some really, really interesting things.
Let's get Megan to finish pulling up that bit about the full moon. And then that's exactly where I want to go, Jules. That's exactly where I want to go. I want to get into the geomagnetic stuff because that was seriously fucking interesting shit.
Yes,
and
definitely.
I'll highlight again some of the shit that we saw last week and this week, where we saw a reversing of energies. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you kind of stuff them like, oh, what's the planetary shifts going on at this point that could be pulling the magnetics? Let's hear it, Amina.
Sorry, I got to correct myself. One more time. It's not Saturn conjunct Uranus. It's not Saturn conjunct Jupiter. It's Saturn conjunct Neptune. For crying out loud, my brain is all over the place today. Saturn is conjunct Neptune at 0, and Saturn being solidifying, Neptune being the deceit that is solidifying the deceit when Uranus starts to go through, change sign and go through the sign of Gemini. That is disclosure. That is 2026. It's Saturn conjunct Neptune at 0 Aries. That's what I wanted to say. Sorry, I had to double check and my internet is very slow. Done it. Off you go.
Okay. Megan, hit us.
So that just kicks off another 7-year cycle of Uranus. So when it hits Gemini, which is another 7 years from now, we're going to have more shocks and more news.
Delightful.
A lot of information is going to come out, and I think there's going to be, because everything is split in a mutable sign, there's always like two camps. There's like duality is rife. I think you'll see unfucker type people being like, yep, I've been saying this forever as this information comes out. And then you're going to have the masses being like, holy fuck, can you believe what just came out? And I think you're going to see
and a whole pile of us sitting there in the background going, it's what I've been telling you for 10 years. Seriously.
Yeah, suddenly the masses will be like, would you believe it? Vaccines aren't safe. Yeah. We've been saying it for years. Thanks for yelling at us for it. So yeah, just quickly to touch on this full moon that we're going to have brewing over the next couple weeks after we clear out through the new moon tonight. Well, tonight for my time zone, before Jules jumps into the electromag stuff. I think this is really interesting because wherever the full moon is building, there's an illumination because the sun is directly opposed it. So you have Mercury right here approaching the sun, and you have Venus just having crossed Uranus. And as the moon is building, so the energy is building, because it's really the build-up to the full moon before the cork pops, that shit gets real. We're going to have an exact opposition to Mercury. People want disclosure. Things are coming out and people want, like, it's like something inside of us is yearning for just some swift change to come in and break us from the oppression that's like, clamping down around us. But we're just not quite getting it. We're going to be given some of it, but Mercury's not with the sun yet. The North Node is moving toward where Sirius is, and so is Mars. That gets into the whole binary star system thing. But it's like we're this close, and then we just don't quite get it. We will be getting some stuff because Scorpio is going to show us. But I think shortly after the full moon, when we have Mercury cross over the sun in the same sign where Uranus is, we're going to be given bits and pieces. but I don't think we're going to be given everything. But maybe it's enough to satisfy people that they hush down a little bit and they're content and that they're not questioning the control, because with Taurus, everything grounds in. So I think with all the support to what's going on in Saturn and Capricorn and Pluto, there's going to be just enough to satiate what everybody's crying for that we're not questioning as much. It's like a distraction ploy in the form of information. So I think it's going to be an interesting full moon.
Yeah, I was just saying with Uranus coming into Taurus, you've got all these planets that have just crossed over Uranus as well. So you've got Venus. So Uranus is it's like shock and awe and things come to light. So it's erratic, it's very electric, it's unpredictable. So we've had a lot of unpredictable kind of transparency and things occur in the month of April, and that's definitely continuing into May. So, and a lot of the sort of closer, faster moving planets are all just passing Uranus one after one. So we're just getting a lot of transparency and just things out of the blue happen and occur. But I think we're a little bit desensitized to it because we're being so oppressed by Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn at the moment. It's just like, oh, here's another one. Here's another thing that's happening, but it's yeah, very interesting. All right. Do we want to jump in or
jump in, and then just guys remind me. There's a news story that just came up this morning for me that I sat there and was like, something's going on here. So remind me about the asteroid.
I really need your video or something that you had with the geomags from the last show, because that's, or just any one of them, because there's been a lot of craziness for how long with the geomagnetics?
Since January 2nd of 2019 is when we started seeing. It's been going like this for quite a while, but it was January 2nd when we started seeing those major blasts. We saw another one of those blasts a few days ago again. And it only happened that one night. But what we're seeing is the particle saturation in the magnetopause, and I don't even have them pulled up right now, and if I try and pull them up, I may end up crashing my system, unfortunately.
That's okay. I can talk through why you want to bring up this story anyway. So
yeah, you go.
Yeah. So anyway, I know Danny's been following the magnetosphere and the solar winds and all that sort of stuff, and we've had just general craziness. And the last couple of videos, there's been a couple of videos that Danny's pulled up where it's the magneto tail. It's in the tail. It's not on the sun side. It's on the back side of the Earth.
Exactly.
And so Meghan, Amina, Anne and I, and we've got this little chat going, and we've been looking at things differently. So we've been looking at, what could it be? There's got to be something there. There's a lot of videos around Terrell Black Stars doing, the Black Sun, or, people are going on the Nibiru kind of craze at the moment. So there's a lot going on, and I thought there has to be some sort of rational explanation for what's going on. And also, there's been a couple of science stories in the past 12 months or so about Jupiter. So I wanted to talk about Jupiter a little bit. So Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system. And I was digging up, where's Jupiter now? Could it be Jupiter? Nothing was really apparent. And then I dug up a couple of articles which I want to bring up if I can find them, because that's really, really interesting. So just give me a second. Yeah, this one. So I'm going to share my screen. Yes. Okay. everyone can see my screen.
Yep.
It's an interview with Dr. Percy Seymour, who's a physicist and also an astrologer. This interview was done in 1997, 98, and was published in 98. And he's talking about how the larger planets affect the Earth's magnetopause, which is really, really interesting. The first part is just his chart, so we won't go into that. But I'll just bring up a couple of other things, and it's talking about like frequency. All the planets emit a frequency. We as humans on Earth emit a frequency, our own frequency, and how this all ties together. So I just got to get here. So since the dawn of human history, stargazers have sought to discover the forces by which the planets influence life on Earth. Now, as we enter the 21st century, go move the chat, the long search for a physical mechanism that explains how astrology works may at last be nearing an end. Apropos to these times, which many astrologers believe to be a neo-Renaissance period for astrology, an English astronomer named Percy Seymour has formulated a scientific theory of astral influences that describe the solar system as an intricate web of planetary fields and resonances. The sun, moon, and planets together telegraph their effects to us via magnetic signals, says Seymour, an astrophysicist and a respected authority in the field of cosmic magnetism. So I'm just, this bit's really, really, really interesting. In sum, Seymour's multi-link theory proposes that the planets raise tides in the gases of the sun, creating sunspots and their particle emissions, which then travel across interplanetary space to strike the Earth's magnetosphere, ringing it like a bell. So if we go back to November 11th last year, and we had the Earth suddenly ring like a bell just off the island of Madagascar. I think it was Mayotte. That the Earth rang like a bell for about 20 minutes, and no one could work out where it was. The news story went all over the world. It rang for like 20 minutes, and we have had crazy geomagnetic stuff happen prior to that, but also particularly this year. So that pinged my interest, and I went, okay, well, how does it ring like a bell? What's going on? Danny, I'm not sure if you want to actually read a couple of things, because I know all of you guys have read things, and I don't want to read through the entire thing, but there's some really, really interesting things in this particular interview. So
you read through this. You read through the pieces that
okay.
Attention, because
there's a couple of things.
Interpret it differently. I don't want my interpretation. I want to hear what you guys what you're getting from it, because I want to stick to the astrology on this. Right,
okay. So he's taken the study from another astrophysicist, another astrologer, and basically on the days where the geomagnetic index was high, the planetary hereditary effects of Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and to some extent the moon were enhanced. So it ties into the 11-year solar cycles as well, but it also ties into Pythagoras' theory of music.
Yes.
As well. So I was reading another article, and I can't find it for the life of me, but it was basically saying that Jupiter has there are two planets, Jupiter and Saturn, which are the larger planets, and they have a base kind of tone. They're very large planets. When they make an angle to something like Mars, Venus, and Earth are like the alto tones. And then you have Mercury, which is like the butterfly. He's a really fast planet. He goes around. He's the soprano planet. So when those planets make angles to each other, they make chords, they make music, and some of them are dissonant, they're really hard angles, and some of them are
Really melodic.
helpful and really melodic kind of energies. Thank you. I was trying to find that word. But when Saturn and Jupiter together, they haven't really done Pluto, but when Saturn and Jupiter are together, they're both bass tones, but they're kind of dissonant. They don't work kind of well together. And I think that's what's happening with Saturn and Pluto. They're very heavy kind of energies. But going back to this article from last year, and I think we'll just put it in the chat after because I can't bring it up now. There was an article last year about Jupiter's magnetosphere going absolutely crazy.
You mean the article that none of us saw last year? Even though
the one that none of us saw last year?
Yeah, I didn't see that article last year.
Yeah, I didn't see it either, and I went, did I miss something? Because usually we're keeping an eye on these things pretty closely, but I didn't see it at all.
Nope.
And it was basically saying Jupiter's magnetic strength is about 20,000 times the size of Earth's. So it's got like 79 moons orbiting around Jupiter as well. So you've got, Ganymede and Io and all those big moons, which are bigger than Mercury, or one of them is bigger than Mercury. So they're pretty hefty. I'm just wondering, are they causing some sort of effect with our magnetosphere here on Earth?
Yep.
And this particular interview goes through how it is absolutely related. It's like an inverter. The sun's like a portal, an inverter. Things angle the sun, which then angles Earth, and those energies are like transferred between all the planets, like a chord, like a symphony, essentially. So anyway, going back to looking at the geomag kind of stuff, it got me thinking about, okay, well, we can't really see any planets on the backside of Earth. There really isn't a lot happening. Everything in the solar system geocentrically is on one side of around, from Capricorn through to Taurus, Gemini. So they're all on one side of the Earth. It could be an asteroid. It could be something going on around there. But then I was looking at harmonics as well. So you think of the planets as chords or frequencies.
And ourselves as chords and frequencies.
And ourselves as individual frequencies and how it's affecting us on Earth. And then I was going to bring up something else, which I may need time just to stop the share and bring it up if someone wants to keep talking. But when you have, let's just say you have the zodiac. I'm going to get a piece of paper. Have the zodiac, and you've got one planet here, one planet at the opposite end. You can actually do harmonic charts by folding the chart over, essentially, where things would normally be in a 90-degree angle or a 180-degree angle, and they would be conjunct in a harmonic chart. So they're actually together. So there is a field of astrology where they specifically look at harmonic charts, and different harmonics affect different things. Like there's the 8th and 12th harmonic are pretty hard aspects. They're related to the square and the opposition, and they cause magnetic pull, push and pull. And I think that could be related to some of the geomag stuff that we're seeing now. So I ran a few different charts around the Pluto-Saturn cycles, and there was one particularly in 1552, which I had a look at, and it basically had all the planets together in one very, very small quadrant of the chart. And it was related to, I'll just stop the share for a second. It was related to this Book of Miracles, which I want to pull up because that was really, really interesting. if I can find it.
Well, I just want to talk a little bit about the chords.
Yes.
As a musician, right? When you play music, you have certain keys that you play music in. And certain keys are very uplifting keys, and certain keys are very deeper. They can be very sad. They can be very angry kind of keys. When we talk about chords, it's the same thing. You have your major and your minors. And when you talk about the chords and you talk about how they affect you in sound, like when you listen to a chord, you hear a in the key of C, a perfect fifth, and it's all very bright, and it's like this, and then you hear, like, say, a minor third, and it's like, you go, ooh, like, oh, it's that, it's horror music. You know, it's the horror movie music.
Yeah,
it's the
absolutely.
drama music that they use when you know someone's about to get their head lopped off, or something terrible is going to jump out at you.
Yeah, so if you go back and explain this Saturn-Pluto conjunction in terms of music, it's a minor. It's very discordant. It's heavy. It's ominous. It's limiting. It's contracting. It's making you feel bad. So essentially, if it's affecting the geomagnetics, or, you know, that's part of the reason why it's depleted. That's, you know, you look at the solar index stuff that you post all the time. It's
So
people
here's
are
an
getting.
interesting thing, because we're talking about frequencies. Now we are talking about, at this point, we're talking about geomagnetics. Planet Earth has its own frequency. We call it the Schumann resonance, right? And the Schumann resonance itself fluctuates. We've watched it, especially this month. It's been like all over the fucking place. Or I should say last month. Now, if we're talking about chords, and we talk about these variations in frequencies, the planetary variation, besides the magnetics, we've also got to look at, and I could hypothesize that the magnetics are there by the cause or effect, if you will, of the frequencies of the planets. But the fact of, you have the sun, you have the moon, you have Earth, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury, each playing a purported note in a chord. As they move around, you're going to see the strength of the notes and the shifting of those frequencies. You take two frequencies and you put them together, they create a third frequency. Right? And this is what I've also talked about people, and like that's why you can get together with a group of people, and all of a sudden you feel like the energy just goes like this. And I've talked about it as almost like a chord, is the fact of when you have a group of people and you're all very like-minded and you have a very similar frequency, you create a chord effect between all those frequencies blending together. And that's when you have those magical moments, if you will, those incredible conversations where all of a sudden it's like this, the energy just comes up. And the same thing, then all of a sudden someone else can walk in who brings a very negative energy, who brings a very, and it causes almost like a dissonance. And you can watch conversations shut down instantly, discussions shut down, with just the addition of one more factor, one more note within the chord that is dissonant. Does that make sense? I hope so, for the non-music people.
Yeah, totally. So actually, it actually goes back to, you know, a very old theory, when music and astrology and astronomy were all together. They were taught together in what's called a quadrivium. And then the trivium at the top was, you know, logic, rhetoric, and grammar. It was our speech.
Yeah.
But and it makes up, you know, the 7 kind of sciences of the world. So yeah, so if I just bring up the Musica Universalis from Wiki, it pretty much goes into that exact same thing, you know. So hang on a second. So just move
Yeah,
a
it's
little
coming up.
down the bottom. So Music of the Spheres.
Yes.
Musica Universalis, literally universal music, also called music of the spheres or harmony of the spheres is an ancient philosophical concept that regards proportions in the movements of celestial bodies, the sun, moon, and planets, as a form of musica. So the music is not usually thought to be literally audible, but a harmonic. So when we go into harmonic charts, we're actually like bringing those chords together to see where there's dissonance or melody together in the planetary kind of sphere. And going back to this other paper, basically explains that some of the larger planets like Jupiter, particularly Jupiter, which has recently been said to be a brown dwarf star this week as well. Another story that's just come out, that it does have a lot of influence in our solar system. It's a visible planet. It's not beyond Saturn. It's massive. It has 20 times the geomagnetic density and strength of planet Earth. It has 79 moons, all orbiting Jupiter. What is going on? What is going on with Jupiter right now? So there's been quite a few stories about it recently. So going back, I'm just going to stop the share because I really need to pull up this interview because it's extremely interesting. But I want you guys to just chat amongst yourselves for the minute so I can pull some more pieces out of it.
When we keep talking about Jupiter, of course, the movie Jupiter Ascending always pops into my head. How can you not with the name? And we're talking astrology, and you could say Jupiter Ascending is actually a very astrological kind of terminology too. When we look at mythology, when we look at ancient cultures and their stories about their astrological stories and how they line up, when we look at the connections given by these ancient cultures to the planets, to nature, plants, trees, how the crops will grow, etc., etc., and we look at it as frequency in music, it's really, really interesting. This is the kind of thing that you could dedicate your life to, just that aspect of the frequencies of those planets on a musical level that would be incredible. I've got like an itch to pull out my keyboard and like start playing with chords.
I can play a musical chart while Jules is looking for what she's trying to pull up.
Yeah, okay.
There's two different kinds of harmonics. There's like harmonic charts and then actual like sound charts. I've got one pulled up. I put in the date for, oh no, the date changed on me. Oh, gosh. We have an eclipse on Boxing Day, and then it's going to take us through to 2 days before the conjunction with Saturn and Pluto. No. Why does it keep? Oh, this next one. Here we go. It's kind of cool.
Is it making it, Megan? Are you
can't hear it?
No. Okay. So
No.
Cancel your screen share. Start it again. So leave your thing running here for the moment. Start your screen share again, and when you click the first button to go screen share, and you get the screen that asks you to pick, at the very bottom left-hand corner, it will say Share Computer Audio. You got to click on that so that we can hear.
Okay. Gotcha. Oh, hold on. Pause. Restart. Pause. Okay. Gotcha. Again, technology is not my friend. Okay. Share.
No. Yeah.
Share computer sound. Gotcha.
Okay.
You can hear like the ominous tone the closer it gets. notice that on the two, like, watch the date 10, 11, and 12. It's like boom, boom, boom. It's
Okay, do it again. I wasn't watching the dates at all. I was just listening.
yeah. That's the build up.
That
yeah.
was really cool.
Wow, that was very, very cool.
Very discordant days in there. But every once in a while you get a nice little, like, a nice sound, like, oh, and then boom.
It's the Peanuts Christmas music special. Very funny, John. Oh, so can you do me a favor, Megan? Can you, or all of you actually, because we're now 20 minutes before the hour, so we'll start kind of wrapping things up in a bit. Can you send me on Messenger in our chat all the links of everything we've discussed? And Megan, can you send me the link of how to, like that, what you were just doing? Because I can guarantee there's going to be a whole bunch of people going, I want to play mine. I want to play what I'm going to hear. I want to play the day. I want to play, you know? I know I do. Definitely. There's a lot more here. It's like I said in the very beginning. The more and more that I look at this, the more that I have these conversations with you guys, it is very clear that astrology is not fluff. Astrology is science. And we in these modern times have lost that, and probably very deliberately, actually almost 100% very deliberately, that aspect of astrology has been wiped out. They want people to think that astrology is just fluffy, hippy-dippy, gypsy kind of stuff that no one actually takes seriously. Yet, as we keep talking about, all the ancient cultures, all of them, relied upon it. It was considered in tandem with serious topics of mathematics, of science, etc. The ancient great thinkers, the people who we put on a pedestal, your Plato and your Socrates and all of these guys who are put on these pedestals as being some of the greatest minds of our world, talked about this. They talk about astrology. They talk about the planetary influences on us, on our planet, on the cycles. And that is what's really interesting. So I'm going to make sure I put this one link that Julie had posted, I think yesterday or the day before. And it's not just one article. It's a link to a series of articles all within that topic. I'm only a quarter of the way through it. It's a massive list of articles. I've only been able to scan through a quarter of it so far. But in every one, there's like pieces where you're like, oh, look at that. Oh, that makes so much sense. When we talk about the magnetics, we talk about electrical frequency because, of course, magnetics, electrics, they're always like this. They're always like this. And we talk about the geomagnetic shit that we're seeing right now. We are seeing crazy stuff that we've never seen before. And Jules, if you can go through the video from Wednesday and isolate those times and dates where I showed the magnetopause showing literal squares in the back of the magnetopause on the back of Earth, that there should be no there's no excuse, there's no logical explanation for why these solar rays, these cosmic rays were appearing in that position at that time. And just take a look at it and see what is there a planetary aspect at that moment? Is there something we can track as to?
There isn't specifically, and I thought the culprit was Saturn, Pluto. Really, I did pull up a chart, but I couldn't really confirm if that was it. And then I started delving into, I think we looked at heliocentric charts. So basically, heliocentric is with Helio, the sun, in the middle with the planets on the outside. And I had a look at that. Couldn't really find anything. And then I thought back to Terrell Blackstar's kind of videos about, it's coming from the underside of Earth. It's coming from somewhere that we can't see, potentially. So then I started looking at declination. So declination is the degrees of longitude below the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. So I was having a look at that to see if we could find something. And then I came into these articles about Jupiter and how they affect all the other planets in the solar system. And basically, once they make an angle to one, they make an angle to all of them and create these melodies and symphonies and chords and things. So it's something that I'll delve into a little bit more, but I'm happy to bring up as much as I can. But I haven't got to your video yet, Danny.
It's okay. Don't worry about it. And just the first 15 minutes, so you don't have to watch the whole video. Just the first 15 minutes. So that brings me to the one question I always have, and we get to it, and it always seems to be at the very end of the show, so we can't really dig into it. Our astrology is based within our little solar system, our planets, our sun, etc. Yet we know that there's a whole universe out there, that we're in the middle of a massive galaxy, that there is a central sun. And we've talked about the fact of right now we're purportedly traveling through the ecliptic of the central sun. These have to have, again, very distinctive effects on not just our planet, but our sun, our solar system as well. Because if you have a central sun that is purportedly a bajillion times bigger than our little sun, with that much more magnetism, etc., we're going to be talking about some really, really funky chords that could be getting played. Is there a way that we can look beyond the borders of our solar system? Not really, is there?
Yeah, kind of. There's a whole heap of trans-Neptunian planetoids and things that have been discovered, and some of those are starting to be used in astrology, but their effects haven't been sort of determined as yet.
Documented as of yet. Yep.
Yeah. So going back to the late 50s, early 60s, we saw the start of the whole new age kind of pop culture of astrology with the age of Aquarius, and that's I guess that was pretty detrimental to astrology generally, but there's been a revival of kind of traditional astrology going back to Hellenistic and periods prior to BC. There's been a revival since they've translated a whole heap of Persian and Arabic texts over the last 20 years, and they're just starting to come back into astrology now. So they're looking at, mixing two different systems of thought, mixing the Vedic and the Western astrology together to give a more holistic kind of picture of things. So there's just so much happening in astrology at the moment. It's very hard to keep up, and it's very hard to keep across everything what's happening.
No, here's the thing. Mercedes just brought up fixed stars. Because obviously there's certain fixed stars against it, like I say, that the ancients knew where Sirius was. And we look at these aspects of as bodies, as their own individual energy, magnetics, gravitational, if you will, all of these pieces. So does that play? Like, does that come into? Because I know some of the ancient astrology talked about Sirius being, of course, one of the prime ones that's brought up all the time in a lot of the ancient things. But is it only solely related back to our astrology within this small solar system that we're in?
Yes, definitely. A lot of those Arabian fixed stars were used centuries and centuries ago. like millennia ago. So they're kind of visible points in the sky. And a lot of astrologers use them. I don't think everyone uses them, but I know Meghan uses the fixed stars quite a bit. She's talking about Sirius, Spica. I guess they possibly do have an effect if they're like completely conjunct. And it's got to be a really tight orb on it. And there's some sort of kind of allegorical explanations for what they mean and what they represent, and it goes back to the stories of mythology.
Yeah.
Essentially. So if you're talking about Ganymede or particular stars or bodies, they definitely relate back to mythology in all senses of the word, all mythology around the world.
Interesting.
Speaking of fixed stars, it's really interesting if you look at the star Regulus, because forever and a day, Regulus has sat at the very beginning of Leo. And Regulus, royal, it's the fixed star of royalty. And Leo is the sign associated with kings and queens and monarchy. Regulus now sits in Virgo. It's at the very ass end of Virgo. So now, as humanity, we're moving into a phase where we no longer look up at the monarchs and the kings and queens as, they are like what we worship and adore, because that's like, the adulation of like the monarchs has been the big thing for centuries and centuries. Now it's about coming back into like purity and being of service and bringing healing back to the earth and being in a communal tribe. Like that's what we're looking for. Like people with the holistic view, like this is the new reign, if you will, that Regulus is bringing. Like this is the time of healing the earth and shifting out of that, the fist of the lion on the throne, and it's more about like the purity and healing. It's all coming back.
You've just got to look at the Bible, and I think there's a million sort of astrological references in the Bible everywhere. I think it even talks about Regulus moving into the sign of Virgo, and it was a time of I think it was like Revelation as well. I think it moved into Virgo in 2017, like 2 years ago.
I have a theory about that, because like to me the Bible is just astrological allegory. Every ancient holy text to me is astrological allegory. And I think if you look into all these patriarchal systems, they all started out with roots that were very balanced and very mystical in their knowledge, and then all of a sudden patriarchy comes in. Why would patriarchy need to come in? I think it's because Virgo is a feminine sign, and if you look at the ancient etymology of the word virgin, it means a woman who is whole unto herself. She's not owned by a man. She's not sexually subservient. It kind of ties in with the Eve versus Lilith stuff. Well, of course, why would they want us to know this? Why would they want both sides of the coin to be empowered? And I don't just mean male or female when I say masculine and feminine. Why would they want that when, oh no, Regulus is moving, we can't have that because now we lose control, we lose power. And when I say we, I mean the proverbial they, as Danny says. Yep. It's all very interesting, and all of this ties into the Notre Dame chart. The moon was in Virgo. It like clicked into Virgo and then boom, boom, boom falls. The ascendant is Libra, bringing back balance. Lilith and Venus, so Lilith and Eve, they're conjunct. And it's like, nope, no more.
Yeah, we're going to just get rid of that there control structures. Yeah, all of them. We're going to just burn them all down, destroy them, tear them down.
And how obvious can it get? It's like, oh, the phallic structure, let it fall. Like, let the tower fall.
Oh, man. Yeah. Oh, this has been a crazy conversation, guys. I've really, really enjoyed this. I love when none of this planning kind of, we just kind of go like 2 or 3 points in the chat saying, okay, well, we should talk about this, this, and this, and go for 2 hours. There you go.
I know. I didn't even cover like even a minute part of what I wanted to cover with the Jupiter thing, but I will put that interview. I'll send that interview to you, Danny, because I think if you have a read through it, you go, holy shit. Like, this explains quite a bit you just look at the animals, like how it affects biology. How many years have we had whales beach themselves and things like that happen because the magnetics are just all over the place?
Well, I had an interesting article come up. Someone posted it in the Unfuckers group. Let's say maybe it was last week or the week before. And on the surface of the article, it was a whole lot of modern science fluff that was like, yeah, whatever. But there was a couple of points in the article that were really fucking interesting. And it was dealing with a group of doctors and scientists who are doing tests of using magnetic frequencies on the human brain. And gee, what will that accomplish? What will that do? Well, if I just put some here. So one of the things that they were talking about in the article was triggering the hypothalamus. And of course, they're doing it about as viciously and horrifically using MRI machines to do this. You're like, well, let's just tear apart someone's brain with like magnetic frequencies. And they were saying, well, other than invasive surgery, we can't really apply the magnetic field directly to the hypothalamus. But what they did is they tracked down, mapped out, if you will, the external portion of the brain that directly links to the hypothalamus. And they were applying the magnetic fields through that particular area to trigger the hypothalamus. And what was interesting is that area is right here, just above the left ear. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I know that in my house, I know that a lot of people I deal with daily have continuous headaches. And they start here. And sometimes they start on both sides, but it's a spot directly above the ear. And I sat there and was like, okay, given all the geomagnetic anomaly shit that's going on right now, it seems to me that when we have a broad spectrum of people from different areas of the world, different places, different age groups, etc., all experiencing ongoing or at least repeating symptoms in the same physical spot, and this article is perhaps alluding to, saying that this could be directly magnetically connected to the hypothalamus. I found it really, really interesting as, again, another physical connection symptom. I know myself, like yesterday we had all kinds of crazy stuff going on, and I was literally at one point walking around holding my head. And it wasn't until like my daughter Quinlan goes to me, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I have a headache." And I'm pressing the heel of my hand into that point. And then I realized what point it was that I was doing. And I immediately went to go check. No, that must have been 2 days ago. And I went to go check the geomagnetics. And that's when I'm like, the magnetopause is like fucking all over the place. I'm like, okay. Is that a symptomatic piece that we can track? But then, of course, you've also got to define it. Like, they were triggering it with an MRI machine. Hello? Wi-Fi? Are these headaches coming from the signals that are being used for our Wi-Fi, being used through cell phones, et cetera, et cetera? These are other pieces. And it comes down to whenever you see these studies, everything is so compartmentalized. You get these studies, and these scientists will look at a piece that's this big. And yet, did anyone actually think to measure and talk about what hertz they were using? What was the actual frequency they were using? What was the frequency surrounding that could be creating a chord when they did these studies? Can we then backtrack? If we have that information, could we then backtrack and look at what's going on around us and find the analogy of like what is affecting what? Is it the planetary magnetics? Is it specific localized magnetics that are coming from your Wi-Fi router, that's coming from your cell phone, etc.? These are all pieces, and it is so difficult to be able to find the answers because all of these studies are always incomplete. They have this much information because that's all they were studying was this little piece. And then we have to go and scavenge around to try and find other information that might fit together to form a bigger picture. Fucking science. I hate science. I love science, but I hate science.
Exactly. And because it's so compartmentalized, we're just absolutely just bombarded with frequencies all around us, whether it's Wi-Fi, 5G, and then you go into all the conspiracy about the 5G, that it's really bad for us, and I'm not advocating 5G at all, but just going back to the video that Meghan played with the discordance in the planetary energies at the moment, we've got that and the Wi-Fi. Like when you're talking about headaches, I'm getting headaches all the time recently. Yeah. And we don't have 5G anywhere near us at all. But there is something definitely going on. So you've got to wonder what the purpose of 5G is.
Well, that's really what Fred just posted in here. So what if one of the main purposes of 5G is to make dissonant music? Do you know what I mean? Throw a really dissonant note into the mix. If anyone out there, if the quintessential they, comprehend frequency and its effects on physicality and emotions and our mental abilities, etc., broad spectrum, we could ask the same question about CERN. We have CERN pumping out massive amounts of magnetic fields, like 100,000 times the power of the Earth's magnetic field. Are these creating, and if they are, they probably are, is it on purpose? Is it on purpose to try to neutralize the natural frequencies that are coming in?
It's almost like trying to fight fire with fire.
Yeah.
Or trying to deflect or block or inhibit whatever's coming in.
Well, doesn't the hypothalamus control hormones and emotions? So isn't that our oxytocin and the sleep patterns that are controlled by hormones?
Gee, what else is all fucked up right now? Everyone's sleep patterns are fucked up.
What's going on between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. that we all seem to suddenly wake up around that time, right? Yep. What's going on there? What's coming out through the energy and the frequency that wakes us up suddenly? If we don't sleep before 11 p.m., that's it. We can't sleep until halfway through the night.
Exactly. And that's, like I said, all this week I had several days where it was like you were so tired at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. Yeah. I'm so tired. And I got kids, got other stuff I have to do. So you force yourself to stay awake and you're like, oh, but I'll go to bed early. And you climb into bed at 11 o'clock and go, great. Now I'm wide fucking awake. Thanks. I'll just read for the next 4 hours because I'm not going to sleep anytime soon. Okay, just to jump in here. So because I mentioned we're way over time again. It always happens. I mentioned the news piece. So this piece, and of course it comes out of Science Alert, which is a propaganda. I love watching all their stuff because it's always like, let's watch what propaganda and spin doctoring they're going to put out this week. They put out an article today. 1,100-foot wide asteroid is on course to pass by Earth in a decade. A massive asteroid will be visible to the naked eye when it passes close to Earth within the same distance as spacecraft that orbit the planet, according to NASA. The 1,100-foot wide rock named 99942 Apophis, anyone who's a Stargate fan has just been triggered, will shoot across the sky like a moving star-like point of light, getting brighter and faster on Friday, April 13th, 2029. Now, I sat there and went through this and was like, okay, when we want to talk about numerology, let's look at all the numbers they've just given to us. The name of the asteroid, Apophis, again, if anyone has watched the Stargate Universe shows, you all are going, seriously, they named it Apophis. And they know the exact date that's going to be visible from Earth is going to be Friday the 13th in April of 2029. And I just sat there and was like, what little piece of coding did they just put out? But then the other thing is, what's going to happen? What's the alignments? Like my very first thought was like, okay, I wonder what the planetary alignment, they've just given us a specific date. What would the planetary alignments be like on that date? Crazy shit. Like I said, sometimes you got to follow the rags and the bullshit websites because they give you the hints of what they are planning or pulling together or trying to manifest to happen. I don't know. I will put the link into the article that'll go along with this though, because yeah. And this is it. Brianna,
and
up. They apologized crap a few years ago. Exactly. That was my trigger. It was like, this has come up before. So where did this come up before?
Danny, I've just looked at the date. Saturn and Pluto, most of the outer planets will be at 10 or 11 degrees. And we have, okay, so the 13th, Friday the 13th of April 2029, that sounds like it's around Easter. Is that Good Friday? We've got the sun in Aries, the moon in Aries, so that could be a new moon. Looks like a new moon. And then we've got Mercury in Taurus, conjunct Saturn in Taurus. We'll have Venus in Aries, opposite Jupiter in Libra. It's quite a difficult chart. Mars in Virgo. And Pluto will be at 10 Aquarius. Wow, it's it's quite an aligned chart with lots of aspects. You can see that right off the bat.
Can you do me a favor, Amina? Can you grab a screenshot of it and then just send me the screenshot of what that chart is so that people can take a look at it?
Yeah.
Like Mercedes over there, who's also into all the astrology, who are going to go, but I want to look at the chart now.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I show you a few photos of this Book of Miracles? So in my little hunt for what's going on with Saturn Pluto, I came across this Augsburg Book of Miracles, which was published in the 1550s, and it's all these sort of sky phenomena that happened in the 1500s, and a lot of crazy shit in the sky. So anyway, I'll bring it up because I think it's really cool. So basically, it's my apologies, a mid-16th century, 16th century Book of Miracles with 167 pages of gouache and watercolor images, some heightened with gold, and each inscribed below with a description of the extraordinary event depicted. So I'm just going to go back into this because this is one of the last Saturn-Pluto kind of conjunctions, along with Jupiter and a whole heap of other planets kind of in one quadrant of the sky. And there was some stuff that was happening in the sky at the time. This particular one doesn't actually give you the descriptions, but if you go into the mobile version, it'll give you the dates of things that happened. So all this crazy sky phenomena.
Swarm of locusts just happened in Saudi Arabia 2 days ago.
And dragons, it talks about dragons and crazy hail and, things burning up in the sky and 3 or 5 suns appearing, and some of them are a little bit allegorical with the dragons representing the nodes, which our planets are going through now. But this was in a lot of these were in the mid 1500s, talking about comets and asteroids and weird creatures appearing out of, washing up on beaches, all sorts of stuff. It's a really interesting book
Holy shit.
to have a look at.
Okay, I need the links for that, Jules, because that is like, I'm going to have to go look at all these myself.
Yeah, this is pretty cool, and it kind of ties in with the cycles as well. So I did try and run a couple of charts over some of the descriptions of the dates, because some of them are quite specific around sort of saint holidays and things like that. So you can draw up a chart for some of the dates, and it is extremely interesting if you tie into the Jupiter, Saturn, and things happening in the sky. So yes, I'll send you a link, but it's absolutely crazy. And we've seen like the sun dogs and things like that, and things happening to crops, weird things happening to crops. Like this particular instance, there was hair growing on the grapes. Just weird shit, like hail and snow in the middle of summer and all sorts of crazy stuff. So yeah, I'll send you the link.
Everything that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, kind of.
Holy shit.
But yeah, some of them are quite astrological, and yeah, that was a very, very similar period. Let's say.
Wow. Okay, well, I'm going to have to review that very carefully. I'm definitely going to have some fun looking through all that. Maybe we'll get the link, make sure we put it into the Unfuckers group as well, and let them have at her. Hey guys, here you go, guys. Have some fun.
Check it out.
Good. Flood.
Yeah, check it out. Weird creatures, things, changing biology.
Asteroids, comets coming down.
Yep. And we had that asteroid test, and NASA was going to do some. Wasn't NASA and FEMA doing some asteroid
disaster preparedness?
Yeah.
Drills?
Yes.
And at the same time, they're doing a drill for a biological weapon plague being released.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, darlings. Well, we are. Oh, look, it's 1:11. Perfect timing. It's 1:11 in the afternoon for me. I need to go feed my children. I'm going to say thank you guys for being here. This was, again, as usual, such a phenomenal conversation, and we'll have everyone back again, and we'll do it all again, and we'll dig deeper on all this different stuff. I have a feeling that those pictures may play a large part of the next show, if we're taking a look at some of that stuff. That's it for us for tonight. For today, tomorrow night is Fringe Night for the Unfuckers, and Wednesday is the Unfuck It discussion, as per usual. And we're going to say goodbye to Twitch. Everyone out there in Twitch land will say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, depending on where you are. Bye, guys.